Hey, what's up everyone, Ollie here. So, I'm a bit late to this video, but I wanted to share and sort of react to the Apple event anyway, because it's what everyone does, right? And it's always exciting seeing new products and stuff. But I also want to say, Apple cinematography is on point. The drone shots, the transitions, everything else in between, it's like watching a movie. I'm honestly so impressed by how well they do their cinematography. They always do such a good job. Also, a lot of the rumors and leaks were completely wrong, which was hilarious. People were expecting a new square Apple Watch, people were expecting new AirPods, and none of that happened, which was just hilarious. At the same time, I don't really follow the rumors and the leaks because I think to myself, like, I'd rather just wait until Apple actually announced the products. I think that's more exciting for me. But anyway, let's get into it and let's go through some of the new products that Apple announced in their keynote. So the first one is the new iPad. The design is pretty much exactly the same as the classic iPad. Large bezels at the top and the bottom with the Touch ID button. I actually am quite a big fan of Touch ID. I still prefer it over Face ID. It now has the A13 Bionic chip. This A13 Bionic chip actually came out 2 years ago on the iPhone 11 Pro. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with using a chip that old, especially considering how fast that chip still is. And considering this is the starting model in the iPad lineup, it should have no issue running the latest apps and it should feel very quick. The rear camera seems to be the same as the previous model. They have said that they've updated some algorithms or whatever, but the front camera is new. It now has the 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. You now get center stage, which is where it follows the person. If they move left and right around the camera, or if other people come into the frame, it will get even wider. This is Apple's best selling iPad, and it makes sense considering the price point. The starting price point is $329, and that comes with 64 gigabytes of storage. It's a very compelling product. I feel like anyone who's looking to get into iPads or getting their first tablet, this is such a good starting point. And the sort of price, the money spent to product ratio, I say is actually quite high. So yeah, some nice new updates to the iPad. And I expect it's still going to continue being their bestseller. Next up is the iPad mini. Now this is the one I've been looking forward to most. Mainly because I actually use my current iPad mini a lot. I still have the iPad mini 4. I use it a lot when I'm reading, especially in bed, when I'm watching videos in bed, things like that. Instead of having to carry around a huge 11-inch or 13-inch iPad, I like using the iPad mini. And now they've updated it. It has a whole new design, has a squared off design, like the iPad Pro. I absolutely love the look of it. I think it looks awesome. It also comes in 4 new colors: space gray, pink, purple, and starlight. I'm actually quite a fan of the starlight colour. It's sort of like a beigey, yellowy sort of colour. I think it looks quite nice, but naturally I'm going to be going with the space grey. The size of it is actually the same as the previous iPad mini, but the screen is now larger at 8.3 inches compared to the previous 7.9 inches. There's now a Touch ID button at the top of the device, and like I said, I prefer Touch ID. I just think it's more convenient than Face ID. They've also moved the volume buttons to the top, which is quite an interesting move. But I can see why, because it also now supports the second generation Apple Pencil. You can attach it to the side, have it charging just like you would on the iPad Pro, and that's a really nice feature to see. It's nice to see that iPad mini is now supporting the Apple Pencil. What Apple didn't share though in the keynote was the chip that came in the new iPad mini, and after the keynote, once they put the website up, it actually says that it's going to be featuring the brand new A15 Bionic chip, which has just come out and is also going to be in the new iPhone 13s. So that's really good to see. It's really good to see it has a very up-to-date latest chip. It means that it will be future-proof for quite a few years. You shouldn't really have any issues when it comes to speed using apps and things like that. It should be very quick. There's now a USB-C port instead of Lightning. Thank God. The Lightning port just needs to go away. It's a shame they're still keeping it on the iPhone 13. But yeah, USB-C port is great. I love using USB-C port because I have a lot of USB-C cables. I can use it to charge my MacBook and stuff like that. But I can also connect up my camera and offload pictures rather than having to carry around a sort of SD card dongle or anything like that. The cameras have also been updated with a 12 megapixel on the back, but there's now a new 12 megapixel ultra wide on the front, which again also gives you center stage. It has center stage capability. So again, nice feature to see on the iPad mini. Apple really aren't messing around with the iPad mini this year. They've really absolutely rammed it with everything they possibly can. And I think it's because it's going to be the only update we see in a while. We probably won't see any other iPad mini updates for a few years. So they're bringing it up to a certain level with the spec so that it just lasts quite a few years. I will definitely be buying one, the space grey one, of course. I look forward to it replacing my older iPad mini. It is $499 though, which is on the higher end when it comes to pricing. But again, considering the specs and stuff, I think it makes a lot of sense. The Apple Watch Series 7. So I think this was actually a big disappointment for a lot of people. They were expecting a new redesign, a new squared off design. There were a lot of rumors and leaks going around about it. But the Series 7 pretty much follows the same design as the previous gen. It is a bit rounder and the screen is a bit tougher, but the screen itself is also a little larger and it wraps around the edges a bit more, which I think looks wicked. I think it looks sick. Like the way the screen really wraps around, the way the sort of design, anything that you have on the screen, the clock, the sort of clock and the interfaces and stuff, the way it sort of just falls off the edge, I think it looks awesome and it just looks really watch-like compared to sort of other high-end watches that have been out there in the past. Apple did say that the screen is 20% larger than the Series 6. It's also 70% brighter, which is obviously nice to see. Having a brighter watch always makes a lot of sense, especially when you're using it outside. The front is also more crack resistant. It has a thicker bit of glass. That's the thing, they don't really call it glass. I think they call it ceramic something. But it's also IP6X rated, which means that it's dust resistant. But to be fair, I've not really had any issues when it comes to dust with my Apple Watch anyway. It also charges faster too. You can go from 0 to 80% in only 45 minutes. Again, that's quite nice to see because that means I could wear it at night when I'm sleeping. And then in the morning, you know, I can just put it on charge, go for a shower, get ready in my morning, whatever, have my morning routine and know that I'll have 80% battery when I'm out the door. So yeah, that's pretty good to see. But the chip inside and the overall features are actually pretty much the same as the Series 6. Still, I'm a big fan of this refresh. I've been looking forward to upgrading from my Series 4. I'm still using the Series 4. It's not a huge jump from the Series 6, but it should be a huge jump for me from the Series 4. I especially like the stainless steel models and will most likely go for one of those. The iPhone 13, I think this is obviously what most people look forward to every year. The iPhone 13s have had a few smaller upgrades this year compared to the previous models. I think what's happening with iPhones and technology in general is that we're sort of hitting a ceiling on how much you can do. So the updates each year are just getting a bit more incremental rather than like really flashy big changes. But some of the biggest physical differences are the rear camera placement and the notch being smaller, a whopping 20% smaller, Apple is saying. But one big upgrade compared to last year's models is that the optical image stabilization sensor shift thing that they had on the Pro Max model from last year is now on every single model of the iPhone 13 this year. So it's good to see that they're bringing sort of a top tier feature down to the standard models as well. The camera sensors are the same 12 megapixels from last year, but now there's a new cinematic mode. This new cinematic mode gives you more shallow depth of field, and it's supposed to be sort of how you see movies, where you have rack focusing, where the focus can change from subject to subject. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. You know, from the footage and stuff that they showed us, it looks great. But this new cinematic mode also has one issue, and that is focus breathing. So focus breathing is when a camera is focusing, it's changing focus, but the focal length is changing ever so slightly. You can see it on the edges of the frame when they showed the demo footage. You can see things are sort of coming in and out of frame. It's as if like the camera's moving sort of forward and backwards. That's what focus breathing is. And it is very, very noticeable on the footage that they showed us with the iPhone 13. It just looks unnatural. It's just very noticeable. I can see how cool it is. I can see that, you know, this is a great sort of piece of engineering and it's what makes movies look cinematic. But from the footage that they showed us, I don't think it looks all that promising, if I'm honest. But who knows? They may actually update it. They may make it better when the iPhone 13 has actually come out. I don't think they will be though, because focus breathing is usually because the lens itself is moving inside the camera. I can't really see that changing much. But yeah, anyway, cool feature to see, and it's always good to see updates to the cameras on the iPhones. The internals have also had a spec bump too, with the new iPhone shipping with the new A15 Bionic chip, the one I just mentioned that was in the iPad mini as well. That should also give you a bit of a battery bump. So you get 1.5 hours more with the iPhone 13 mini and 2.5 hours more with the standard iPhone 13. The iPhone 13s now come with new base storage of 128 gigabytes. Again, nice to see. It's always nice to have obviously double the storage compared to last year where the starting model was 64 gigabytes. The displays as well now output a max brightness of 800 nits on the iPhone 13. Again, a nice upgrade from the previous 625 nits. Everything else though on the new iPhone 13 is pretty much the same as last year's model, if I'm honest. So, I mean, if you're already on an iPhone 12, it probably isn't worth upgrading. But if you're coming from maybe an iPhone 10, iPhone 11, you will see big upgrades. I think from a device like that, it can make sense to upgrade. When it comes to prices for the iPhone 13s, the iPhone 13 mini starts from $699 and the iPhone 13 starts from $799. So the prices haven't actually changed from last year's models. The iPhone 13 Pro. So the Pro models this year are actually still pretty similar to the 12 Pro models from last year. The same overall design, although the camera bump is considerably bigger and the phone itself is also ever so slightly thicker. I'm not exactly sure why the phone is so a little bit thicker. It can only seem just to pack the bigger camera stuff and the bigger battery in the phone itself. It still has the stainless steel band that goes around the edges like last year's model, and it also has the matte glass on the back, which I liked. I'm actually a big fan of this design. I really like the design of the 12 Pro, so it's good to see it again in the 13 Pro as well. It also has a new smaller notch like the iPhone 13. It has a new maximum peak brightness of 1000 nits compared to the previous 800 nits. And finally, there is Pro Motion. Finally, I've been looking forward to having Pro Motion for God knows how long. It's been a very highly requested feature when it comes to the Pro versions of the iPhone. And it goes all the way up to 120 Hertz. But to save on battery life, Apple have done something quite clever here. The refresh rate will actually change between 10 Hertz all the way up to 120 Hertz. It's not going to be always 120 Hertz. The refresh rate will change depending on what's on the screen. So if you're just like reading some text or on a website, then the refresh rate will stay around 10 Hertz. But when you're going through animations, maybe using an app or a game that has lots of animations, then the refresh rate will be 120 Hertz. So yeah, it's just really good to see ProMotion 120 Hertz in the iPhone 13 Pro. It's something I've been wanting for ages, and it's something that should have been there last year really. There's also a new 1TB option, so if you're someone who likes to store a lot of stuff in their iPhone, you have that option now, and it also has the new A15 Bionic chip too. Everything else though is pretty much the same. There is a new lighter blue color option, which will take place of the darker blue from the 12 Pro lineup. But the other great thing about this year's models with the 13 Pro and the 13 Pro Max is that there actually isn't any spec difference between those two models other than battery life and screen size. So you'll be getting the same camera, you'll be getting the same spec and everything. The only difference, like I said, is screen size and battery life. The biggest changes though with the 13 Pro models is the camera, all the cameras that it has on it. So there are some noticeable changes with the cameras. I think that's where a lot of people do get mixed up with the 13 and 13 Pro. So the Pro models feature a telephoto lens alongside the wide and ultra wide. You only get the wide and ultra wide on the standard 13. The Pro models feature ProMotion display compared to the 13 models. The Pro models can also shoot ProRes video, which is pretty niche feature, but cinematographers and video people will love it. One thing to consider though, is that you do not get ProRes 4K recording, 4K, with the 128 gigabyte models. You need to have the 256 gigabyte models to do 4K ProRes. On the 128 gigabyte models, you're limited to 1080p ProRes. The apertures of the wide and ultra wide sensors on the Pros are also different compared to the standard 13s. The wide lens has an aperture of 1.5 instead of 1.6, and the ultra wide has an aperture of 1.8 instead of 2.4. And the ultra wide is definitely the one that will have the biggest change, the biggest upgrade, because I noticed on the 12 Pro when shooting ultra wide shots that especially in low light it can get very grainy. So it's nice to see that the aperture has had a big bump there, because then when it comes to shooting pictures they should be a lot more clearer, a lot less noisy. So that's pretty much it for the Apple keynote and all the sort of major announcements that they had. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm mainly looking forward to the new iPad mini and the Apple Watch Series 7. Obviously, I'll be buying all these devices and reviewing them on the channel. So if you're interested in sort of my opinions and reviews of the devices, subscribe of course. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more.